Okay, now that you are comfortable with variables, let's introduce our next programming idea, the notion of an array. Thus far, we have seen how we can create labelled spaces in the memory of our computer called variables, and how these variables have a state which can be set as shown here. Furthermore, we have seen how when we execute this program, the following occurs. In the programs that we have written thus far, we have used these variables to hold the values of scalars. We have already started to encounter a problem, however, namely that if we just use variables to hold scalars, we are going to have to think of a lot of variable names. What would thus be nice is if we can come up with a label for a contiguous block of memory as shown here. As there are 5 spaces in memory here, we can hold 5 different colours or scalars in the object labelled A. This is the idea of an array in a nutshell. Rather than creating individually labelled variables to hold each of the scalars, we create a space that can hold more than one variable. We can thus hold a list of scalars, i.e. a vector, in an object with a single label. We thus don't need to think of lots of variable names. We can then reference each of the individual elements in the array using the name of the array, A, followed by a number, the list index, in squared brackets, that indicates where in the list the element is. In the language of this fake program that we have introduced, we can thus change the colours of the second and the fourth boxes here using the commands shown at the bottom of the slide. Notice that the first element in the list is referred to as element 0, the second element is element 1, the third element is element 2, and so on. This means that the last element of a list with n elements is element n-1. To see how these arrays work in practice, consider the following code for calculating the first 4 numbers in the 7 times table. 0 times 7, 1 times 7, 2 times 7, and 3 times 7. We can replace the 4 variables that have been used to hold these 4 numbers in the code on the left with an array that holds these numbers using the code shown on the right. There are 2 important steps when we do so. The first of these is that we have to create an array with the appropriate size. This is achieved by the line shown here, which tells Python to create an array containing 4 zeros. Once the array is created, we can then assign the values of the 4 elements in the array as shown in the lines here. We could also, if we wished, use the values stored in these elements to perform some calculation. Importantly, if we tell Python that these 4 numbers are grouped together in an array, there are other things we can do. For instance, if we run the print command shown here, the variables in the 4 elements of times table will be printed in a comma-separated list surrounded by square braces. If we want to remove the square braces, we can print each of the individual elements in the array separately by writing print times table open square brace 0 close square brace, comma times table 1 with 1 in square braces, and so on. In addition, an array has properties other than simply the values of the elements that are within it. For example, if we want to know how many elements there are in an array, we can use the len command shown here. This command would set n equals 4 as there are 4 elements in the array times table. To summarize then, we can use arrays to store ordered list of numbers. If we want to set the nth element in an array to A, we would use the command shown here. Here we're setting the nth element of the array called myList equal to A. If by contrast we wanted to use the nth element of this array myList, we would use a command such as the one shown here. In both these commands, it is important to remember that the first element of the array is element 0, the second element is element 1, and so on, which is perhaps confusing at first, but is something that you will hopefully grow to love. Lastly, note that one reason for using arrays in place of lots of variables is that when we do so, we tell Python that the values of variables are connected. We can thus perform operations on all elements of the list of the array at once, as well as things like getting the number of elements in the array, which we simply cannot do if we have single variables. I hope that is reasonably clear. Have a go at the next few programming exercises, which should give you a chance to apply what you have learned. Good luck!